This time we're talking about topics that I actually know stuff about, though.
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Lou starting out the stream. Hopefully this works. I'm gonna check to see if everything works. It seems to be working. So, hello everyone. We're back with another Wynncraft Podcast episode. And this month we're talking to HeyZeer0, or Zeer for short, the developer or one of the developers of Wynncraft. Hi, Zeer.
Hello. Also, why on
Also,
Earth
the world
would you-
restarted.
Yeah, that was not. Why on Earth would you say my name like that? Jesus Christ.
What, the HeyZeer0 or the Zeer?
Yeah, dude, it's just HeyZeer0 or Zeer. Whatever.
Oh, it's supposed to be HeyZeer0. Yeah, see, I say HeyZeer0.
Why would it be
Wow.
HeyZeer0? It makes no sense.
Dang.
Okay.
Wow.
Why isn't it an O then? Oh, wait, now I'm just stuck here. Where am I? Okay, let me get back on
Look
the housing road.
cooler, dude. I was like
It's like
14 years
Oh.
old when I got this name, I think.
Yeah, I
gotta
just
be
realized
the-
what the issue is too.
There we go. All right.
Didn't even fact check SH.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Not gonna
Talk
lie,
about-
I didn't realize you had to fact check Zeer's name.
Yeah.
But hey,
Well, the pronunciation. Yeah. Well, at least we all learned something, right?
no,
Right.
that's just you.
Yeah. Okay.
I think just so what everyone else realized that
Come
the
back.
Zero is
Everything-
supposed to be an O.
What a normal stream moment. Everything seems to be
nothing
going
happened.
fine.
I haven't no. It's like no one
Like-
saw
Most
it.
importantly, nothing
Completely
worked.
okay.
There we go. There we go. Okay.
It's completely okay. Nothing happened.
Yeah. Things are
No one saw
working.
nothing.
Yeah.
Let me, okay.
Okay, let's start over mentally.
I got so
Hello,
confused
everybody.
because I was switching cosmetic helmets when
Oh.
when the world restarted. So I just thought that
Oh, you
my game
crashed. it.
crashed by switching cosmetics.
You crashed Wynncraft. Your fault.
Worst Wynncraft. No.
Yeah. Hi, Zeer. Or Zero, I guess.
I don't think it's quite that easy.
Or can I say Zeer for short, or is it Zero for short then?
You can say Zeer. It's okay.
Yeah, okay. So can you tell us a little bit about what you do? What is it that you do that not everyone might know?
Absolutely. I'm Wynncraft lead developer. I work on the backend of the game and I create, I don't know, the world that you see around you, except I don't make the content itself. I make what allows the content to be made, if that makes more sense.
Mm-hmm. What allows the content to be made? Such as like what?
Such as abilities, for example, or I can create more script information so the CT can make better quests and stuff like that. Or, for example, I created a loot run system, and then this allows CTs to create loot runs on their own. So
Yeah.
my job is basically create systems that CT can use to create the content that you see around on Win.
Okay. Can you explain a little bit about your process? Like loot runs, for example. How does it go from the idea of loot runs to a mechanic in game?
Absolutely. Well, the development of Loot Run was quite complex. Loot Runs by itself is a very complex project, has a lot of stuff involved into it, but in most of the case, it's like there is me and Salted may come up with an idea of a project that he thinks is kind of cool, then we hop it into a VC or something and we discuss about it. And in general, what happens is Salted has like a basic view of the project or what he wants to achieve. So for example, with Loot Runs, he wanted to do sort of a roguelike that was very long and you had to do a bunch of objectives and it needed to be very, very random. And my job was to actually make that real. So everything that was mostly like design decisions on how to make this project were done by me and in general. So for example, you have my early, you have some early concepts of the loot runs, the one I sent you if you want to show. It's like,
Oh yeah, can you
can see
send that
that.
in the side one and I'll open it up for the stream to see?
absolutely. Do you want me to send on the channel VC?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, it's here. Just like, this is a small concept that Salted drawing, like really quickly explaining the the...
Wynn died again, I think.
True, actually true.
But anyways,
just-
people can see the plan here, the
I'll just
schematic
get
of
a new
Lootrun's.
world real quick so that it actually like won't restart instantaneously again.
Yeah.
So,
If
what's this
the bot
picture
works.
in the meantime?
Yeah, this picture is simply a concept of what Salted 1 did for the loot run. So you can see that there is a point where you start the loot run, and then you have like two options of challenges, right? You have the blue beacon and the purple beacon, which never happen. But as you can see, if you choose the purple beacon, when you complete, you get a positive modifier. When you go to the next step, you have another option and so go on, and that's basically how the loot run loop works. And we basically have this gigantic documentation with all the concepts and how it should work, how it should integrate. And my job was simply to implement that and also give it life, because at the same time there is no design decisions about it. So there is like no information on how it should look, or like how do we start a loot run, how does that work, how the keywords needs to be picked, how like when you start the loot run, what happens next, how do we introduce beacons to people, or how do we make then enable challenges. This is part of the stuff that is not properly documented, and that I came up with solutions for it, because part of my job is also doing a little bit of game design and making these decisions. So for example, loot runs, I can stay here and speak for hours about the tiny details that I made about loot runs, because my objective with the loot runs itself was to create the most satisfying system as possible. And I think it's quite well done in this sense. Because there is like super small decisions that I took that makes the system more satisfying, and it was like a super fun project to work with, and it got me hyped immediately. And I know that it was like, it's not simple as loot runs, right? Because there is a lot of other systems involved into it. So we had to rework loot chests first, and then we had to we have to make caves, then so that we could make the loot runs. And this like long period, I knew that I would need a bunch of assets to create loot run, for example. So one of the first things that I did before I even start making the loot chest was go to Tax Elated, and ask him, because I had this idea for the loot runs. I wanted jingles to make them more satisfying. Like I wanted a positive feedback whenever you start a challenge, whenever you finish a challenge, and whenever you completed the challenge. So I asked him to make me a jingle for the loot runs, and he made me 3 versions of the jingles. They were gonna be used for a different purpose at first. The idea that I had is like, since loot runs were supposed to get harder and harder further you go, and there was gonna be like an X amount of challenges. My point was simple, like I have one jingle that plays at this like at 25% of the loot run, then another jingle that plays from 25 to like 70%. And another jingle that is played when you finish a challenge that is played whenever you complete the loot run itself. So the jingles would just evolve to give you the sensation of progress while you were doing that. But I ended up going with a different path, which was like, I had these 3 jingles, right? So one of them was used when the challenge starts.
Yeah.
Another one of them is used when the challenge ends. And then I have the last one was used when the loot runs end, which is still the final purpose of it. And there is like small sound details that were taken into this considerations. For example, take like everything is properly timed to give space for the player to breathe and make their decisions accordingly. So for example, if you're a new player trying loot runs, they are very intuitive because for example, when you start a loot run, you might notice that the beacons appears first, and then comes the chat message explaining the beacons after around 1 second or something. And there's a reason for that. It's simply because it gives room for you to first realize that you got into something and that you need to pay attention to that. And also because the beacons pop up and you might go like, what are these beacons? And then immediately on chat, it drops the message saying what these beacons do. And even though that's a simple small decision, this is stuff that on game design is very satisfying, because for your brain, whenever you have a problem and you solve this problem, it feels nice. So it's like super small decisions that makes loot runs feel more satisfying and feel better to play. I can talk about like a bunch of them. you can get, for example, the boons menu.
Yeah.
My objective with boons is like boons are an important choice for you to make on your run. It's like what's actually gonna decide if your one is gonna succeed or not. At least at the stage of development, because you need the boons to actually be powerful enough to continue with the loot run. So I wanted the player to have a lot of window for them to think, at least on the first time they're doing it. So I simply took the easiest approach. I made an immortal. The timer doesn't decay whenever you're choosing a boon. Your screen goes black and all the sounds around you are muffled. All the volumes is reduced. So you don't have to pay attention to the mobs around you because you're immortal. You are not going to be annoyed by the mobs around you because they're going to be making like insanely less sound, for example. And you don't have the visual feedback of actually looking to the world because you only have the UI in front of you. So it's easier for your brain to process this amount of information and digest it and actually make it a decent selection. I don't know if that's the proper word, but you can choose properly because you have more window. It's much more cleaner. And my goal with the system is just to make it insanely satisfying. I want feedbacks for everything that I can to make it feel like the player is actually progressing to the loot runs and they're getting harder. So there is the complex sound system that goes with loot runs, right? Like the music system of it. You have different musics per challenge. You have transitions between each music that are synced properly. You have other stuff, and everything is just to give you the sensation that stuff changed and that you're progressing through the gameplay loop. And this makes loot runs feel like a very satisfying system by itself. Because, like, in general, it's very overwhelming when you have a bunch of information that is just simply thrown at your screen. It's like you don't know where to pay attention, and attention is very, very important. I'm very sensitive to this kind of stuff. I get overwhelmed quite easily with this kind of stuff. Normal people, they don't get, but even though they don't get overwhelmed, this still affect them, but they just don't notice as much as I do. So it feels for me that it's much simpler for me to make these decisions that make it more satisfying because I'm very bothered by it. So I want to make it like look good, and by reducing the information that I'm displaying to the player and focusing the player on the right spots, it makes the system more satisfying. So for example, you picked up a mission. I want to show that there's actually a thing. So the mission is gonna blink a little bit on your scoreboard after you got it, so you know that you can keep track of it on your scoreboard. And so go on. Whenever you finish a challenge, how do I know that I actually finished a challenge? The scoreboard also changed the challenge count to green, so you know that something changed. You got more time. How much time did I got? It also displays in the scoreboard as well. And these are small feedbacks that gives the sensation of progress, gives this good feeling that you're achieving something and that you're actually getting the rewards, and it makes playing the loot runs much better. This is all design decisions that I took while developing the system, and that's how loot runs came to be.
Do you have a favorite of these smaller detailed decisions that you've made regarding loot runs?
Well, it's like there are small decisions, but it's more about the huge scope of them. So I like all of them, but them together make much more sense. It's like fuse much better and makes the runs much more cooler than what it could be. Yeah. And there's like my favorite ones are usually always related to music, but I kind of like all of them. I kind of like all of them in general. They are very nice and specific.
So, apart from loot runs, what else have you worked on this year?
Oh, it's more hard to find something that I didn't work on. Because I actually make most of the stuff that you see. It's like, I made loot runs. Okay, what did I make? I made the missions recently. I fixed a bunch of quality of life features that were like, not fixed it, but fixed a bunch of bugs that increased the quality of life of the game. For example, stuff not stacking, or it's like delays on stacking stuff. This is stuff that always bothered me and just makes the game a little better. Fixed a bunch of anti-patterns on the game. It's like, there is nothing that I hate more when I can't figure it like by my brain a pattern of the game. So if you have a thing that was an anti-pattern like poison, and you're super mad that poison is not affected by strength anymore, that's my fault because it made no sense at all. It's like it was a hidden mechanic, right?
Yeah.
It's like it wasn't explained anywhere, and when I asked around, people are like, "Oh, because poison is green," and I'm like, "Poison is purple. It's not even green. It doesn't relate to strength at all." So I'm always kind of making the game feels more into the itself, into the game loop, without breaking stuff that makes no sense for the player head at first. So these decisions are decisions that I also took for the game. Of course, it makes sense. Like, I'm not going to do it by myself. I talked with Solid and we also agreed on it. It's just like we're having 2.0 correctly. So we're revamping the damage system. Okay, let's get rid of this thing because this is the appropriate time. So it makes no sense whatsoever to exist. So everything is done like in appropriate time and small decisions. I have loot runs. I have one more abilities. I don't remember if 2.0 was released on this year or previous year, honestly. But
I remember all release dates pretty much.
2.0, yeah. I don't remember if it was released this year or previous year.
Oh,
2.0 generally?
Yeah, that was last year.
8th of September last year.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, September. Okay, so we kinda getting there, like making 1 year of 2.0. Yeah, there is I made all the housing changes. I mean, it's hard to keep track of what I make because I'm basically working on everything.
Actually, a question about the stacking. So I saw that the way that you fix the stacking is that all the gathering materials are no longer diamond axes, but they're paper now. How exactly do you make paper have several different textures since it doesn't have durability?
That's actually a very good question. Okay, because this is like a back-end question. So the thing is, on versions that are above 1.14, I think, you have a new Minecraft function that is called custom model data that you can add to every item in the game as an NBT tag. And basically what it does, it's instead of using durability, you can use this custom model data to replace the item sprite or the item model itself. So if you have an item that's stack, as long as it has the same custom model data, it will stack properly to the client. So that's exactly what it did. The change is basically take these diamond axes that don't stack on the client because they don't stack naturally, they're axes, make them into an item that is stackable, and then it's going to fix the client, the sink, and that's the fix. And it's like infinitely times better. It's just like works insanely better. And that's one of the features. That's why we are dropping old versions, like this kind of stuff that we can do and that we know that we are aware this technology exists and that gonna make insane progress for the game, but we keep not using it because we are locked into lower versions.
Yeah.
So for example, now I have to maintain 2 versions of the code, right? One for 1.12 and one for upper versions, just simply because I can't use this behavior. And it's much more work to keep multiple versions of the game than just a single one.
So
has the hiring of Dash made a difference in the switching to newer versions, or at least pushed it a little bit, since obviously Battle Dash has seemingly more experience with working with higher versions?
No, not exactly. Dash does have experience with working with upper versions, but we already had plans on removing these versions and working on other stuff, yes. So his impact, he did stuff for the versions, for example, the new chat, that's something that he did. And of course, he made it probably faster because he had more knowledge over it. But it's not exactly something complicated. We are aware of all these features, and we are aware that they can be used, and we want really to use them, but we just can't because we are locked into older versions.
Yeah.
On the versions thing, are there plans to in the future implement the interaction boxes or like the chat item display, text displays from 1.19.4?
Absolutely, yes. We want to also use the... Oh crap, I forgot the name.
Interaction boxes?
Is it display entities? I'm not sure.
Display entities,
like
that you can make custom mobs
Yeah.
with, right?
Exactly, that's something that we are looking forward on using, at least for upper versions. We know that we can both use armor standstill, but display entities are much better. So definitely, if you're playing on an upper version, in the future, probably all the armor stands will be replaced with display entities.
Ooh.
I assume you're gonna replace invisible slimes with interaction boxes then?
Well, it's like the slimes technically work, so we could, but it's at the same time, it's like it works.
So we talked like almost a year ago, and then we brought up this whole version thing, right? And I think it was you and Assault that we had talked about that with, and the answer was a bit of a like a doubtful reluctance on updating. Why has that changed now? Like why is Wynn switching?
First, we realized that upper versions have much more potential and we want to make Wynn cooler. So that's a point. Second, very important point, Wynntils updated and dropped 1.12. So it's no longer half of the players are keeping on 1.12. Not at all. Most of the players are 1.19 or 1.20 now that Wynntils also updated to 1.20. So that opened up a massive door for us to update these versions, because before there was half of the players that were playing on old versions. So I'm like, oh, okay, so I'm gonna force these players to update. But then we have Wynntils, which makes it an actual problem, because a lot of people like Wynntils and they use Wynntils. So upgrading was technically blocked by Wynntils, quite literally. And now it's much more easier for us to drop these versions, considering that Wynntils is not there anymore and not updating.
Is there a reason that you continue to support versions below like the pretty much highest versions, like 1.90, 1.20?
Because players play on them, yeah. There's 2 players on these versions, yes.
So
I feel like most people would be like, if either they play on 1.8 or they play on like whatever version they have to play on.
Well,
it's not as simple as that. Anything but 1.8.
It's not as simple as that. People play on most of the game versions. It's like, of course, you have the most predominant versions, but they do actually play in quite like random versions at some point. Yeah, it's like, for example, I can tell you at the moment there's 42% of the players playing on 1.20. There is 39% on 1.19 and 6% on 1.12. And there is 2 player play on 1.18, 1.16, 1.14, and 1.13. So I don't know why people still use older versions when they can just always upgrade, but there, and it doesn't necessarily impact us blocking these versions. Maybe if in the future we feel like dropping 1.16 might help us do something cooler, then absolutely we're gonna do it. But at the moment we don't see a reason to drop 1.16 when most of the features can still be used by these versions, and there are still players playing on it.
Is the fact that Wynncraft is still running on 1.8 background holding any features from your versions back from being implemented into Wynncraft, or is that not really an issue?
No, that doesn't impact us. Wynncraft is not exactly. It's like we can't even say that this server is running 1.8 because it's like we haven't edited it so much that it's like it's not even that. It's not any version. It's or server nerdy, but it does have features from 1.12, it does have features from 1.13, it does have features from upper versions, it's like all over the place. So it's not exactly, you can't tell it to say that it's 1.8. But no, absolutely not. That doesn't block anything. No.
Switching subject. Do something different.
I have to head out. So maybe I'll be back later. Maybe I won't. But I'll have to leave for now. Bye.
Bye.
You mentioned Wynntils, right? And we brought this up when we talked to you last year, that since you started as a dev on Wynn, some Wynntils features have snuck into the main game, such as beacon tracking and such. Do you have more plans on incorporating such features that people use mods for? For example, like, why aren't item roll percentages displayed on the actual items in the game, for example?
Okay. Of course, if there's a mod feature that is super cool and we like it and we feel like it's feasible on vanilla on a good way, absolutely we might do it. ID's percentages a bit of like a weird topic in specific. It's just that items by itself are very overwhelming for new players because there is a bunch of new statuses. People don't actually realize that they are actually rows and they need to be rolled. There is other factors like overwhelming the player with a bunch of information and numbers when they don't need it and stuff like that. So we are definitely interested on having percentages because they make sense for the game. It's like it's core part of it, honestly. In my view, it's fundamental. You need a percentage to know if you have a good roll on an item or not. But we want to do it in a way that it feels much nicer for new players, and it feels in a way that it's proper to us as well. So we discussed it already in the past, and we just concluded that it wasn't the time at all because we were lacking this tool. But maybe with upgrading to new versions, they might come in the future.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I could have taken the render distance as an example, but you guys already added render distance.
Yeah, exactly. The render distance.
Then this is a question that was sent in, I think, on the forums thread I made. But some people wonder, what makes something require too much dev time? I'm assuming they have suggested some features be added, but been denied due to it requiring too much dev time.
Well, dev time is kind of a meme, but it's not about. It depends on the scope of the project in general. Since there is only me and Karnkal as active developers at the moment, we are limited on people. So imagine like paralleling, right? If you have 5 people, that means you have five people open to make this task. So you can work in 5 different projects at the same time, right? Yeah. If you have 1, you can only work on 1 project at the same time. So that's basically how dev time works. If my list of tasks is like filled to the brim, then of course I won't have more time to do more stuff. And there are stuff in the updates that are prioritized. For example, we have been really wanting to change the mob casting sounds, right? Because I did a temporary fix to them because the portal sound was just too overwhelming. I didn't like it at all. Most of the people hated it. It was insanely loud and overwhelming. And I just changed it to something else. But it wasn't the ideal sound either. I just changed it as a temporary because the previous one was terrible. With this, taking this in consideration, fuck's sake, I forgot what I was talking about.
And the dev time, I'm assuming it's more like people aren't aware that, like people don't know the things that are on your to-do list, for example, right?
Yeah, they don't know what is on my to-do list. And yeah, sometimes my to-do list is full and I'm prioritizing everything. And I was talking about the sounds, right? And the sound is a change that I want to do, but it's super minor. It's not, it doesn't affect much your game. Of course, it affects somehow, but it doesn't affect much. And I have a lot of other stuff to do. I had Lootrun missions. I have a bunch of other stuff. The character banks and other stuff. So going on for this update. So I didn't end up doing this update, but it was simply because my task list was full. I already was doing a lot of stuff, and I ended my deadline, like I filled my deadline quite precisely, right? I finished when I needed to finish, so I didn't have more time to do any other of the other stuff because I finished it right on time. So that's when we say that we don't have dev time, is simply because our stuff is already filled. Or time is already filled with other stuff, and there is stuff that takes more time, stuff that takes less. If the more complex the stuff, of course, it's going to take more time. It's hard to decide when something takes time or not. You need to ask me or a developer to know, because we are aware of the code. Maybe a change. It happens with Salt quite frequently. Sometimes he's like. Sometimes he's like, can you do this? And I'm like, holy shit, that's complex as hell. Simply, and it's like a super simple feature, like add a text
update version overnight.
Well, no, that's complex, and he knows that. But it's more like change a text somewhere, and I'm like, oh, okay, that's a text that is complicated. For example, take the Lootrun task, Lootrun text, right? Sometimes you have stuff like +5 challenges.
Yeah.
And whenever this value is reduced to 1, it still says +1 challenges, even though it should say challenge because the plural is incorrect. But that's something it's not super complicated, but it's very complicated with the system we currently have. So we would need a lot of changes to actually support just a removal of an S. whenever the value requires plural or not. So it's super silly. It like really depends.
And an S in a parentheses wasn't an easy fix for that. Just like, you know,
Well,
you read it in if need be.
Well, yeah, but then it kind of sucks. It kind of sucks. We prefer to keep the challenges then, because it's like,
yeah. I mean, on the topic of like small changes like that, and the spell sounds the mobs have, for example, that you mentioned earlier, what are some changes you've made to make the game more satisfying?
oh, that's a lot of. Well, I mean, you have the loot run system, you have the stacking stuff, you have adding sounds to all the GUIs in the game, making them have feedback, like you click, make, or something like that. It just like makes the game feel satisfying. This is the one that's a bit controversial, but the item explosion, whenever you kill a mob, the items pop around you. That was me, and it actually makes it more satisfying. But of course, there is people complaining about it just because the items kind of get spread.
I guess you gotta walk like 3 blocks to pick it up.
Yeah. To counter that, we increase the pickup range, which causes another issue with dropping items and so on.
Yeah. I think we mentioned that last time.
Yeah, it's still like that, I think. I'm not sure if I fixed it, but I think people kind of got used to it and just are throwing items further away from you.
Yeah.
But in general, there is like small changes, making, for example, the damage holograms, they falling down, or whenever you're dealing damage from the same source, for example, Arrow Storm, instead of spawning 5 billion holograms, we just get the same hologram and we keep it on the air for as long as the Arrow Storm is hitting, and the damage keeps updating on the hologram. This is also satisfying, makes you be able to read whatever is happening because you throw a bunch of arrows. One more. Making the game patterns more easy to understand and following the same pattern in the game. Imagine like your brain, every time you look into something, you need to process whatever it is, and if it's something new, you actually need to use your intellectual part of the brain to decode whatever you're seeing. So it uses more brain power, let's say like this. And after a bit, when you get used to this pattern, it just becomes automatically. You know it, you look at that, and you know what it is. So ensuring that everything follows the same pattern is fundamental, because instead of offering in something overwhelming to the player whenever they face these patterns, for example, a complete new GUI that doesn't follow any of the patterns we had before, like text patterns when you hover the items and stuff like that. It's very overwhelming by itself, because you have a different text pattern here, a different text pattern there, a sound pattern that plays different, and this stuff get overwhelming for players in general, because you need to do more heavy thinking to be able to understand what is being shown. But if it's something that you're already familiar, then you're gonna look at it and you're gonna understand immediately. So for game design sake, keeping patterns is always good. That makes it easier for games to understand. So I'm always keeping these patterns. I'm like, we have when we are making menus, for example, GUIs, we have a toggle list of options. We always follow the same pattern. We have the title pattern. We have the spaces. So they're like a template that we follow, just to ensure that whenever you look at it, you will recognize this pattern, because it's something that we already saw before, and it makes it easier for your brain to understand and makes the game more satisfying in general. It makes it easier to digest. Satisfaction is very much related to completing something and being able to figure out what is something. So the faster the player does it, they feel more satisfying and more neutral. You can say like design changes that feels natural, like you don't even realize that it was placed at that point, is a good change. Are insanely good design changes. It's just like you don't even notice that it's there, but it's something that someone put there just exactly to make it feel more natural. And feeling natural is very good in general.
Okay, so like when you make a GUI or menu, like what are the things not to do and to do to make it not confusing?
Well, this depends on the context of the menu. We always want to show the necessary information of the menu. Sometimes we want to make the menus look cooler, and we always do that. So we go talk to, for example, I go bug Faye Arani about so he can make me a menu GUI or something, like a visual for the GUI. For example, the loot runs, I went and bugged Faye a lot about them, because I want them to look in a specific way. But it's mostly about following the patterns that we're already used in the past. so it's easier for players to understand in general. Making sure they have feedback sounds, because I want to click and I want to hear that my click did something. So it's very important that the GUIs make sound whenever you click them.
Yeah.
And pretty much other stuff related to that. Designing GUI is always a little bit hard because you want to make them in an intuitive way, something that makes them understanding, or add features that make them easier. For example, you have the GUI you have the guild manage menu that whenever you capture territory, it just pops up a new icon that allows you to quickly change the apply a loadout to this territory, which is quite fast. It helps a lot whenever you're attacking territories and so go on. So small decisions just to make it looks good, or taking consideration the travel of the mouse. If you want to make a GUI that is very like you access really quickly, you probably want to make it closer to the center of the screen where the buttons are, so you can click it on easier. Or if you want people to actually read whatever's on it and don't click accidentally, then you want to avoid adding stuff exactly to the middle of the GUI, and stuff go on. Making the GUI more responsive is something that is also nice. For example, take the housing GUIs. Even when stuff is still loading, it doesn't block you from doing stuff. It just tells you, wait, we are loading this, wait a second. Or like before, it would be kind of weird. It would like click the value and then it would load the data, then open the GUI, and then you have this delay, right? This delay doesn't feel right to the player. It feels like they actually didn't do anything. So it's open the GUI, load the information while the GUI is being open, and then replace the GUI with whatever information you loaded after. It makes much more sense to the player, and they will know that their action did something. The feedbacks for actions and player actions is something that is quite important. It's like you click, you want to know that whatever you clicked worked, right? It's like, and if it doesn't, you're gonna be like, did this thing work? It's like, did it do something wrong? And it's no, just open, process the data they need, and tell the player that what is happening. It's much more respecting their need for feedback.
Could that, like, the whole logic of following the pattern be extended to how, like, the GUI looks? And is that then, like, the explanation why the first version of the Lootrun menus and the colors threw people off so much, because it was so different looking than normal GUIs?
Yeah,
like in terms of like the saturation. Because I think like I haven't seen people complain about like the toned down version, because it feels more like muted, and overall like the GUIs are kind of muted in Wynn.
Yeah, they were very vibrant before. Yes.
Yeah.
Doesn't like something that I specifically picked. There was. There wasn't something that I specifically picked. It was something that Faye did by himself, and I was like, okay, it looks good. I'm okay with this GUI. But yeah, I think it was very vibrant, and Faye noticed it and changed it on a few other patch. Like whenever we updated the retrospect to be less vibrant, and I do agree. I think it looks better in general. Yes. The GUIs does look more modern, but that's because we are modernizing most of the stuff.
Yeah.
And the idea was actually that Super Bowl is a cool company, and they're doing cool stuff, and they're new, and they want to revolutionize. So that's kind of why the GUIs also look a little bit different.
Yeah, I mean, I think it fits much better now with the more toned down colors. I don't like it. Not every menu has to be the paper.
Absolutely, yeah.
But yeah, it's sort of switching totally different topics here. If you could rework any existing mechanic or feature in the entire game, what would you change?
Okay, I have a bunch of hot takes on this. None of them are gonna happen.
Yes,
but
yes,
I have a lot of hot takes on this. For example, if I would design Wynncraft from scratch, I would get rid of elemental damage at all, just damage, and it would be 10 times better. I hate elemental damage. It's super hard to explain to players. It's not done properly in the game. It's not like have Genshin Impact, right, where a character always do the same element because they have it, and then you have the combos between elements, right? It makes sense. It's too a little bit hard to understand for players, like new players. But on Wynncraft, it's a fucking mess. No one understands what the elements does, and they don't even care about the element. It's sometimes you're just boosting the element because it's your weapon element, and then you might have a friend that deals the same DPS as you on like a combat dummy, but on a specific mob they don't, and you're like, why? they killed this boss faster than me, and it's like
That's the hardest of takes I've heard.
Yeah, it's like generally for design, the
people
elements
just
are
thought
not done
that
properly.
people should just wanted a rework of elemental exercise, but you want to delete the entire thing.
Yeah, I always have this
Yeah.
hot takes. It's like I see some patterns that don't make sense, and I'm like,
Mhm.
how can I fix it? Can I fix it? If I can't, just get rid of it. Of course, we're not getting rid of the elements because we're too deep onto that. But
Yeah.
I would love if I could to get rid of elements. It would make, in my opinion, the game much better, much easier to understand the damage.
Is there anything else you'd change as drastically?
I probably would change a little bit how the pet system work, but this one I'm not gonna talk because it might happen. And more overall, I can't come with something to add because this is like I know that I have more hot takes on how stuff work, but it's like they don't come into my mind at the moment.
Oh, no deletion of profs or
Oh, I want to
removal
delete
of
Shaman,
guilds.
yes. Joke.
Oh. Shaman is the best class. I don't get that. Delete like I don't know, assassin or mage. I don't know.
Yeah, there was like I whenever we make a changelog thread,
Yeah.
Salted writes the base of the foundation of it, and I go in and I stylize the thread, so I'm the guy that makes the thread look cool and actually make it 10 times more readable.
Yeah.
So I think on the 2.0 I added like a hidden line on the on the changelog to say that Shaman was deleted at the end, and Salted didn't notice, and it went public, and everyone was like, deleted Shaman, yes. Because it was actually on the changelog, yeah.
Chat saying assassin's already been deleted. With the lack of shade stepper buff, I guess some people would say that an assassin is deleted.
I have nothing to do with buffing or balancing the archetypes, okay? Sure,
No,
don't
that's
bonk me because
that's
assassin-
Xavier. Yeah, we yelled at him last time.
You can book Xavier. But it's probably not even Xavier. It's like we didn't had enough time to actually do ability tree changes this update.
Yeah. Oh yeah, this one was way too quick. Like well, not too quick, but it came out way sooner than I had expected. The camps didn't surprise me much, right? Because well, we had talked to Salted previously in the end of August. Well, actually, we talked with him in the beginning of August. I just take a lot of time to edit. We had talked to him and about like adding just like a camp and such in like smaller patches, but the whole like mission changes and all the new stuff.
Yeah,
crazy things. Did not expect.
Yeah, we weren't like happy with exactly how Lootrun's were playing, and we were like, this idea of missions are there for quite a long time. It's like, and they were like, okay, I think it's time we do some changes just to make it look feel and play better, and we did that. And then there's also a lot of other stuff like the character banks. Oh my god, the character banks are so nice.
Finally. Yeah, it's so nice. 140 new pages if you have champion rank and 14 classes.
Exactly. And not only that, it's like these changes look small, like it's the new bank, right? But they are kind of big on the back end. I quite had to rewrite a good part of the banking system to support that.
Really?
I had to I literally wrote the entire structure for character game mods, so we could just add more game mods in the future easily, and also to support Ultimate RMM properly. It's like
what
stuff they look small, like just add a game mod called Ultimate RMM that just blocks you from using the bank and allows you to use the pouch. But it's not as simple as that. I had to rewrite a bunch of structure because it wasn't done properly when it was implemented first. So it took time, and not only that, it's like whenever we run maintenances to apply the updates, it's because we are migrating data from an old format to a new format. So I changed the format of how character game modes are stored in the database. I changed the format how the bank is stored in the database to make it better, easy to manipulate in our end. And there are several like backend changes that are done every update that is like much more complex and system. Take for example, loot runs, right? You enter a loot run and you are on your own private world. You are inside the world, but all the mobs there are yours. You are not interacting with anyone that is around you. You can't hear the spell. You can't hear anything. And this feels natural. You don't even realize that's something. But that was something that I had to implement. I had to add something that's called world views into the code. That's how I call it. I don't think it's a proper name, to be honest, but it's like the proper name would be like word dimensions, but Minecraft already uses dimensions to the words. So
Yeah.
I went with world view, but you can have world views now, which allows you to create different instances of the world, and they actually have their own data and stuff stored for script usage and stuff. So you can basically make, for example, and we're probably going to use the stack in the future as well. For example, we can make a raid instance be actually an instance in the world, even though we are sharing the same locations, sharing the same thing, but we can run multiple raids in the same world technically. It's not as simple as that. It requires more work, so we're not going to do that yet, but that's this technology that I developed is something that is going to help towards that. So making systems is not as simple as just do this. There is a bunch of other changes that I need to do. So I had to properly make these spells in a proper container, so they would always be inside their own world view, so you don't like buff a player that is just nearby you, but you can't actually see them and stuff like that. And it's a lot of work. There is a lot of time that goes into making this stuff perfect, and it's like I hate doing stuff. I already told you in my previous interview, but I hate delivering stuff that doesn't feel good.
Yeah.
For me. So if I have this thing and it doesn't play good and it has a bunch of bugs, I'm gonna be like, no, I'm gonna fix this and I'm gonna make it proper. So make everything proper in the most proper way I can, and it feels better. So it feels like natural. You went early run and you don't even notice that you are on your own private world. But this stack that
I was thinking I was thinking of like an improved streamer mode, so people can't like kill steal if you're in /stream.
But that would be okay. I have an idea, which is like getting rid of media server completely, because you can actually make the media server your own world, and maybe that's something that I might do.
Oh yeah, in the future. I'm gonna circumvent Salted here. I need a TikTok world. Just saying.
A TikTok world. Yeah.
I want to spawn 10 Gregs in Deathless, and they won't let me.
What the fuck? Okay.
With the whole character banks, I'm actually surprised, because Lou and I were thinking that it was just like taking like the misc bucket and the housing island, like island versus individual storage system, and like putting them together into like you know, taking the two banks in one from the block bank, and then the 10 pages from the misc bucket, and that was like all the work required for the character banks.
Oh, no, not really. As I said, I had to change some structure. I had to change some other stuff that I can't exactly talk about, because it's like secret stuff that was kind of complicated. I had to change. I had to migrate the players from the old format to the new format. I also had to migrate also bound items for the global account bank to the character bank. And like implementing the bank itself is kind of simple, but the structure changes that were required around it. For example, now I need to consider a new bank whenever I'm doing transactions. It's like, I'm going to take the money from the bank. Do I take the money from the account bank, or do I take from the character bank first? And so go on. There's a lot of that. We had a bug with the market as well related to this recently.
All the proffers lost all their stuff.
Yeah, exactly. I'm sorry for that. Just like was too many cases. I forgot. I didn't see one, but it is related to this changes. So it's much more complicated than that. Yeah. It's always is. It's not always simple.
I mean, chat is worried about the prop stuff. No, it's just like not everyone, but if I understood it correctly, all the proffers that use the trade market to like store like 6,000 items, they didn't have the space for it and just put it up overpriced for free storage. When they took it out, it just like deleted the items, but it's fixed now, really. Right? Or
it's fixed, and it wasn't like that. It was like, so you have 5,000, I don't know, void gems, right?
Yeah.
And you want to take that out, it would take 5,000 slots, so it wouldn't let you take it out.
Oh, it wouldn't stack it.
Yeah, and if you had like 5 and it would ask you and you have 5 slots, it would just simply make one, and 5 different slots instead of stacking. It was kind of silly.
But it wouldn't delete people's stuff then.
No, so I didn't delete anything. Or if you
Oh,
deleted, then it's
Okay,
probably still related to them.
Then I misunderstood the hysteria. I just kept getting pings in all the prof channels of everyone saying like, "Don't use the trademark it. You can't get your stuff." I'm like,
Yeah,
"Oh man."
you just couldn't get your stuff out.
Yeah. What I liked is that it automatically put the soulbound stuff in.
Yeah.
That wasn't easy, was it?
I mean, it's like I'm gonna check here how many lines of code that's here. But it's not hard. It's not hard either, but it's just like okay. Let me see here real quick. Okay. 59 lines of code. It's not a hard change at all. It's just we need to migrate the bank, and the reason I did that is first because you can't put soulbound items on the account bank anymore. You can take them out in case they are there. Also, they need to go to the proper bank of the character. And not only that, you only can put soulbound items on your character bank if they are from the character you're using. So it makes much more sense. It's like you can't put them on the wrong place at all. Blocks you from doing that, which makes much more sense. Sometimes it makes it easier for you to keep track where you use your soulbound items. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I like it because I can never find. All my classes are named the same thing, so I never understood which one was which. So it's just nice to open it up and see, oh, it's this class.
Yeah, exactly. It's much better. Yeah. Much better. When I implemented soulbound, it was like, this is gonna get a little bit confusing.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll take this one from the chat. Then Quint is asking, did you ever consider learning a real language like C instead of wasting time on JVM development?
Yeah, I'm gonna learn Wynnscript.
Wynnscript. Oh, the only thing.
That's a real language.
Yeah. It's Thank you. Lou wanted me to ask a little bit about the API. I know it's Netmia's sort of area of expertise, but I also know that you handle the API as well, right? But Lou wanted me to ask what new stats we might see with the upcoming API changes. Are we getting chests
I'm not exactly
back?
sure what's gonna be added to the API, since I didn't manage the project. It was done by NAP, but I think there are quite structural changes that are gonna be available on V3, and there might be new data. For example, you can retrieve the player ability tree for a character. There's probably be more information that wasn't available on V2 as well. Chest count very likely, war count very likely as well. Can't confirm because I'm not exactly sure. Snap is still on chat. He could confirm. What did you say?
Lootrun count? Could we see like a Lootrun leaderboard?
Perhaps. I don't know how Nap did it.
Mythics per Lootrun.
I don't know.
Mythics per Lootrun ratio.
Mythics per, yeah.
Like how many mythics you've gotten, like those old school Sky Wars leaderboards that like showed like kills, lost games. Yeah.
No.
We're gonna have to wait and see. I mean, the API was down earlier. Is there any estimate on when these new changes will be available?
No, NAP's still working on fixing some stuff and make sure it works properly. So probably in the soon future. It probably won't take long. The API is there. It changes completely just like how it works. There's a bunch of new roads. There are a bunch of things. There is a new documentation that NAP wrote. So everything is properly done. And whenever we are ready, we're gonna release it. Yes.
All right. What has been the most difficult part of each update this year to work on? And so housing update, Lootrun update, and Lootrun 0.2 2 update.
Okay, so it's not the most difficult part is always the mentality, okay, of actually doing this stuff. Because, okay, when I did the ability tree, okay, I basically reached the apex of designing a specific structure, okay, about like allowing configurations and then adding parameters, allowing stuff to be quickly as easily editable and stuff like that. And I made it the ability structure, which is like the thing that is very, very versatile that we use to make new abilities. It's super easy to use. You can change all the parameters and stuff, and by CT can like go and change an entire ability if they want, just by tweaking the configurations / parameters of them, so go on. And this is I reached an apex of the design. I think it's super fast, super easy to calculate. It's super intuitive in the code. It's the best. And the thing is, I wrote more than 100 abilities for 2.0 update, and I can't stand looking into abilities anymore because I just did too many of them. I did all of them.
Yeah.
So I was like super tired of doing this. But the thing is, I reached this apex, and this design, it works for literally everything else. So I'm doing little runs, and I'm doing, okay, booms are abilities. I'm doing curses are abilities. I'm doing missions. Missions are 2 abilities in one because you have the keyword and you also have the requirement, which is also treated as a sort of ability. So it's just the mentality. I'm super tired of making abilities because everything turns out to be an ability. It's super funny. I still do it, but it's like, can I do that? So I was more hyped to do the guild bank than to do the actual run changes because I didn't have to do an ability.
But then the way it works makes it so the content team can then just basically add whatever new missions and new abilities and new boons and new challenges, whatever they want, just like that.
Like some of the stuff requires work, like dev work, but they can tweak the configurations of it. For example, let me grab you, I don't know, I'm gonna grab you like bash configuration file. And then the way it works is by stacking this parameter. So for example, if you want to do an upgrade, you can just do and change this upgrade on demand. I'm gonna send on the podcast chat. It's like you have this, for example.
Right, can I share this? Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Boop.
It's just some small stuff. It doesn't make anything.
What does any of this mean? Oh, okay. So the delay.
So do you see? You can change the delay of bash. You can change the mana cost of bash. You can change the amount of neutral damage that it's going to do, the earth damage it's going to do, the knockback that it's dealing, the vertical velocity that it's doing, and the radius of the effect. And the ability changes around these changes. So for example, if you increase the radius, the visual of bash will automatically increase as well. So everything is dynamic as everything is set up. So it's like, it works insanely well. That's how it works. So you want to do an upgrade that increases the amount of bash you have, you can just go and increase the parameter to 2 and another IML and then just link the nodes, and it works perfectly. So it's like, works super well for this. It's very versatile. CT can change anything. That's why Zeer can just go and like remake an entire ability tree on his own without actually needing dev, as long as he doesn't need to edit an ability. Yeah. Because simply there's a bunch of configurations. It's super easy to maintain for CT. And that's the purpose. That's like why it was in this way. The idea is like, I don't want to hard code into the code, so then I would need dev time to change the mana cost of bash. Well, I could just have a configuration file that tells you this.
Is this why the new major IDs are more like ability parameter changers?
Exactly. Major IDs, you can make custom abilities for major IDs. Some abilities are custom major IDs. For example, Plague is a custom ability. But most of the major IDs, they are simply editing existing abilities. Just for example, making Meteor faster. Just change the parameter that changes the speed of Meteor, and then you have faster Meteor. And so on. Everything is very versatile. It allows for creativity. CT can create many major IDs they want, and so on. It's just a very nice system in general for them to keep.
Interesting. It looks still complicated to me, but that's because I have no experience with it. I don't make spells, so...
I mean, it's just, you need to learn how to read the configuration files and how to edit them, but that's like easy work. It's not much stuff.
And so, like, loot runs and all of the stuff and missions, they work in a similar way then?
Absolutely. You have, okay, I have a settings configuration file that has, at the moment, for loot runs, 1,420 lines. And it just, you can literally tweak the whole, how beacons work, how many stuff beacons we give, the weights of the beacon, the description of the beacons, and the description is automatically updated. So for example, if you increase the beacon, for example, the aqua beacon, it has beacon efficiency, increase your beacon by 100%, right? It says 100% description. If you change the beacon parameter to be 200, the description will automatically replace this with things. So it's easier to keep. You don't need to keep checking off a bunch of values somewhere in a bunch of random places. You can change the weights of the beacons. You can nerf the booms. You can buff the booms. You can change anything about loot chests as well. You can change the name of the boon. You can change how the icon of the boon, you can change the name of a mission, you can change the description of a mission, you can literally change nerdy everything. And then you have configurations per camp as well. So for example, you can have the silent expansion camp have 10 beacon choices that start, and then another camp has 2, because that's a setting that you can change. You can also configure the rewards you're gonna have, the weight for each reward, the challenge that you have, the songs, the requirements to start, the playable area, and much more time. It's just like whenever you are a GM and you are making a loot run, you can literally make a loot run out of nothing without the help of anyone technically. You can just like write a bunch of configuration files and that's it. You have a new loot run and you have a new camp. That's why we have a lot of, like, I'm not like belittling the work of who made the new camps, but it's much easier to add new camps because it's like you don't need a dev to do any of this. They were working with the new camps and I wasn't even aware of that. It's like they were doing it on their own, just doing the change that was required in the map, just doing the new caves that would be the rare card and so on. It's like we can parallelize and that's make the development much easier. So it's definitely worth investing time into making everything in this configurable camp because we can then parallelize and tell CT to do something, the CT to do other stuff, and then we can work on these camps much easier and add much more content. That's why we have been able to deliver much more content through the past months and years. It's simply because we are developing more tools, we are improving this aspect so we can do this stuff and be much easier, so we don't need devs all the time to do the work.
Is there anything you'd like to say? Otherwise, I'm gonna wrap up with one last, final, very important question.
I don't think so. No, I'm not sure.
All right. So, I'm sorry, but this one's gonna be a joke one. But the most asked question, obviously, on both the Discord here and in the forums post I made for this is when's Fruma coming out? So can you leak to the peeps, you know?
Sure thing. I'm gonna leave. Okay, so Fruma will definitely be released between the next 300 milliseconds and 14 years.
14 years. Okay, so max 14 years from now.
Yeah, max 14
we
years.
won't have to wait longer. Okay. That's good to know. It's good to know. Thank you, Zeer, for joining us today, and thank you everyone who tuned in. We'll be back with another podcast episode the first weekend of next month. We'll announce the guest the week before, but yeah, thank you guys for watching. Thank you, Zeer, for joining us today, and thank you for giving us insight into what you do. Anyways, it's been a pleasure, everybody. Goodbye.